Everyone. Actually, everyone's not here, but there's nobody here actually in the meeting, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and go through the first reading of the two first readings for this week. So we don't have journals due until, journals were due last night. So if you are behind on that, just make sure you do your journals first and then watch this later. What I don't want the journals to be is, well, you tell me what I said. I'd rather that you go through, read it yourself, tell me what you think, and ask questions as you go through, and then I can answer those questions. But we essentially skipped a bunch of middle stuff between the first fight with Grendel and then they have a big party and celebrate the fact that his arm is sticking up on the beam at the top above the hall. They're all drinking. Hrothgar gives a bunch of gifts to Beowulf, and his wife walks around and gives mead to everybody and does all sorts of other stuff, and then they celebrate. But it's really an interact. It's not really Beowulf. So, but he gets lots of praise from Hrothgar, which is what you get, and of course he is very gracious about all of that, and he's a little boasty, but that's okay. Now, this time though, we have another attack, and that's what we've skipped to. So I'm giving you the three most exciting parts of the epic, but really you're reading most of it. You're reading more than you think. And to try to read the entire thing is a lot, especially since it's still, this is pretty new to you, and this is an abbreviated semester. So anyway, so we've gotten to this point, and they've had the party and everything, and then they sank into sleep. So they're sleeping now, thinking, well, everybody's safe. So they're in the hall, okay? Because Grendel's dead, right? He left a blood trail down to the pond, and he's just dead. There's no way you can survive that much blood loss and blah blah blah. And they're actually right. He is dead. They think he's dead, and they're right that he is dead. What they don't know is that there are more like him. And so they don't know that there's anything like him. He's a one-of-a-kind monster nobody's ever, come across before. So why in the world would they even know that he's here? And so they all have a nice party. Most of them get drunk, but then they fall asleep all drinking and stuff like that, and happy, content, feeling safe. And then other stuff happens. So it doesn't take long. So literally they sank into sleep at the beginning of this verse, and not but what, 10 lines down, Grendel's damned. Grendel's mom, his monstrous mother, brooded in misery. So she's, her son came home and died. And so she's ticked. Now the truth is, for the population at this time, that makes sense, because that her reaction to it makes sense, that she'd come for not just to eat people, but for revenge. And that's what she wants. She didn't come and attack Herod before the hall, but her son did. And while his actions were wrong, coming in and eating 30 soldiers plus, they were, he's a monster. But when he gets killed, Beowulf goes in, rips his arm off and stuff, and he runs away and then dies. She feels a sense of vengeance, and that's very much part of this kind of pre-feudal society. Mainly because if you're like, there are two camps, they actually cover this in some of the stories in between here, and the old Grendel being killed and then Grendel's dam coming. If you, for instance, say that you have some sort of tiff or whatever, and you kill a person from another clan, another neighboring tribe, well, then they will demand either Weirgild, and I let me see if I can put that in the chat, Weirgild, or it's kind of like, it's like gold given for a life, like for a person. It's like a price, a man price or something. There are all different ways that they say it. It's always a hyphenated something, but it's gold that you give in exchange for somebody that you killed, like in atonement or something. And so if you don't get that, if you know, so the tribe whose person was killed would go to the other tribe and say, look, so and so killed our person, you owe us this much gold. And they would either pay the gold, or there would be a feud that would develop. And even with that gold, you know, you're supposed to let things go once the price has been paid, but that can create a feud that can last. You know, you kill one of their people in retaliation, then they kill one of your people again, then back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. The only reason this doesn't end up happening is because there's really only Grendel and his mom. Had there been a whole tribe of this, you know, spawn of Cain, then they would have been on it. It would have been quite a war. But there are only these two people, Grendel and his mom. Nobody, there's no other monsters in their little tribe. So, but it means Beowulf, you know, essentially what Grendel's dam is doing is she wants a price because her son was killed. So she, even though he was going in to kill, she doesn't care. He's her kid, and she's going to love him forever, and she doesn't care what he's done. You know, to her, he can do no wrong, you know, like a lot of moms are. So Grendel's dam is now miserable. She's upset that he died, and you know, she's been essentially hiding underneath the pond for forever, and she's been hiding there since, you know, because she's the spawn of Cain. She's hiding because she's a monster. But then and it says, once Cain brought strife, murdering his soul brother, and they bring up Cain again, his father's son with his blade. And so this is all Cain and Abel, back to the biblical stuff. And then Brandon in exile, marked by that killing, fled to the wilds far from. So essentially the assumption is that Cain fled. He went off somewhere, and all of the people, he was given the mark of Cain. That's what people call it. And it's in the Old Testament. We don't know what that means. It's never described. People have very much differing theories about what that mark of Cain is. Is it a mark on your forehead? Is it some other sign that, you know, but we don't know what it is. And most people, I mean, some people have, they use it as a way of being prejudiced against certain races, where they say some other race, you know, if they're not white, then they must have the mark of Cain, which is horrifying. And I will never, please don't ever write about something like that. That's so absolutely abjectly racist. But instead, what this scholar has decided, whoever wrote this tale down, he has decided that Grendel and his mom are this other race. They're Cain's kin, Cain's descendants, because of the crime that Cain did. So, essentially, you know, they had fled for a long time. They'd been in hiding all this time, and Grendel was one of this group of Cain's kin. And then he, of course, picked a fight with Herod and Hrothgar's thanes, and he killed a bunch of people. But then finally he came to close grips with him, and, you know, with actual Beowulf. And that's when Beowulf essentially ripped his arm off. So they're reminding us what he did, in case we forgot in the last episode. So and he, of course, Beowulf trusted in God that, you know, he would be taken care of, even though he said, I might die. But that's okay, because that's what God wills. So, but anyway, he overcame the fiend, grounded the hell ghost, and they're just going to keep on using these epithets over and over again. And now Mom, dark with greed, decided to pursue the trail. So she's followed his trail out of the water, and she's followed the blood trail all the way back to the hall, which she's probably never been inside before. Okay. But she is making a wretched attempt to avenge his death. So she came to Herod, found the ring Danes asleep in the hall. They call them the ring Danes because of the wealth. So, you know, a king can be a ring giver, which reminds me actually of, you know, if you're a big fan of Lord of the Rings, this is definitely okay. First of all, if just the Hobbit alone, if you've read the Hobbit, then you will probably can probably tell that Smog, the dragon in The Hobbit, is taken so, I mean, well, of course, J.R.R. Tolkien was a medieval professor, so he absolutely had taught Beowulf. But the end of Beowulf, where Beowulf, that second set of reading, when Beowulf fights the dragon, absolutely, there's so many similarities between that and what happens in The Hobbit. So he absolutely did draw upon the medieval resources he had. So essentially, so she comes to Hobbit, to Harrod. She finds the people sleeping in the hall, these ringdanes, and she's, all these people. And then it says, then was a great reverse for those earls when Grendel's dam found her way inside. The onslaught was lighter, but only because she was a girl. Okay, so she's not going to be able to do what Grendel did. Grendel could like suck a person, bone and blood and all, just, but she can't do that. So, but she still has, so she just doesn't have the ability that he has to eat tons of people or something like that. And the truth is, they essentially, the sharp swords over the benches are unsheathed, and many a wide boss shield is gripped in the hand. So people notice she's in there, and they rise despite their drunkenness, and they have their armor. But remember, it's exactly the same as with Grendel. She can't be hurt by swords and shields. And so she comes in, sees all these warriors. The warriors see her and go, arm yourselves, and she is freaked out. She was in a panic when she was first seen, desperate to flee, now in haste for her life. But on the way out, she swiftly sees one of the nobles, one of the thanes in there, or, one of the warriors, gripping him fast. Then she fled for the fence. So one poor guy, she just grabs him on the way out. The great warrior she had torn from his rest was to Hrothgar the best loved companion among all his friends. So someone very, very dear to the king. Beowulf was missing. Now this is key, because if he were in the hall, would she have gotten away with some dude and taken him off to? No, Beowulf would have stopped him because Beowulf's magnificent. All the other things, though, armed or not, can't stop her. But it say he said he lay in another place, one assigned to him, to that leader of Gates after the gift giving. In other words, he was given special quarters because he was Mr. Hero dude. And that's actually pretty common, even when you move later and go into like, the Scottish clan system and things like that, which were of course centuries after this. They still did that. Most people would sleep in the hall, most men especially, but then there would be, for people of higher rank, they'd be placed in their own bedrooms. But the majority of the hall was just a hall, so there weren't, it's not like they had a hotel of 52 bedrooms or something. No, they'd have like, 4 or 5 good ones, and then everybody else would just sleep in public. So, but Beowulf had been in another room, so he didn't even know what had happened. But then people started screaming. She actually took not only the soldier, the one guy, but she also took Grendel's arm. So even the trophy that Beowulf had gotten, and they nailed up onto the rafters, she had taken down and took it and the guy and booked it. So essentially, this is a hard thing, because it says that transaction proves hard, for which either side is then forced to pay with the life of a friend. In other words, they're doing that where you don't pay me money, and then I'm going to get revenge, and this is going to become a feud. So Hrothgar knows, okay, we're in trouble. So the lady came, because, and how they know that she was Grendel's mom, we have no idea. But essentially, he knew that person that she took was going to be dead. There's no way. There's no way that he was going to survive this. So Hrothgar's already mourning. Then Beowulf was brought to the king's chamber at dawn. So he's finally told of what happened because he didn't know. He wasn't there, remember? And of course, they praised him, that noble champion, the earl among earls. And so he went to find Hrothgar. And essentially, in some ways, the king is already mourning. Like, is this ever going to stop? I thought we'd stopped it, but now it's happening again. And that's what he's fearing, is that this feud will go on and on and on. And Beowulf is like, are you okay? Like, with humble words, he asked if he'd spent a pleasant night. And then Hrothgar is like, no, I didn't. Sorrow is renewed. Ask not after pleasure. Asher is dead. And this is the guy who was taken by Grendel's dam. So she took a man named Asher. And he starts talking about all how he's related to him, how he's a friend, blah, 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 all the things that he did for him. Such as a man should be. So he was a good dude. She snatched him, slew him, that errant evil. And who knows where they went? Like, she's gone. Who knows what lair she ran for, glorying in his carcass, glutted by gorging, all in vengeance for last night's fight. So he thinks, okay, she's come back for vengeance, which she did. And she took him. She took Asher. And so essentially what he's worried about is this is not going to end. And Asher's dead, somebody who's really close to him, and we'll never be able to, this will never stop. Okay. And so, he says, I have heard it said by the upland men of my people, so the people who lived up in the hills, that they have seen two such as them. So 2 Grendels, alien spirits. And as far as they could clearly make out, one of the 2 was like to a female, the other, wretched, went like an outcast in a man's form, except he was larger than any man. So this is like Sasquatch and his mom. The countrymen called him Grendel in days gone by. And so now we get the kind of the history of the fact that Grendel's been seen before. And goodness knows, it says in days gone by. So we don't know how long these 2 beings have lived. They don't know who his dad is. They don't know how they were conceived. Again, now the scribe has already said that they are descendants of Cain. And they've always lived hidden. Okay. And so essentially what they think, we followed trails, and they all lead to this fen, this pond. Okay. And he says only a few miles further from there stands the mere, the lake, overhanging a frost-gripped grove, deep-rooted trees shadowing the water, where every night weirdness is seen. So if you go out there at night, you can see weird stuff going on in the water. We don't know how deep the water is. We have no idea. And so what he thinks is it's, essentially, animals avoid it. They won't drink from that water. The water's creepy. And he even says the whole place is foul. Dark water spouts rise upwards. And it's weird water. It's creepy water. There's bad stuff going on. And then he tells Beowulf, this is so important, that once more help rests on you alone. So in other words, I'm counting on you, Beowulf, not my people, because they've already, they didn't do it the first time. You're the one who killed Grendel. I need you to go and kill her. You cannot yet know the dread place where you may find that sinful creature. Seek if you dare. Settle the feud and take your reward. I'll give old treasures, wealth as before, braided gold if you win your way home. In other words, if you go and kill Mrs. Grendel, Grendel's mom, then I will give you more treasure. And he's like, it's okay. Don't grieve. It's always better to avenge a friend than to mourn too deeply, which is what Grendel's mom just did. But of course, we're immune to that because she was a monster and so was he. But he says, he goes, and we just don't know when we're going to die. Let every man who can win glory before he dies. This is like, that might as well be the mantra of Beowulf. So he says, essentially, it's better if, as a warrior, you go out and get all the glory you can when you can. That's the whole point of Beowulf's life. So he says, let us swiftly follow the trail of his mother for Grendel. There's no hesitation. Beowulf doesn't go, well, let me think about this. I mean, but no, he says, let's go to the trail. I swear to you, I will go where she will. She will not be lost on some fold of ground, nor in a mountain hole, nor an ocean bed. Doesn't make any difference where she is. I will track her down and kill her. Okay. And the old man's all happy. Yay. And he thanks God Almighty for Beowulf's promise. And essentially, Beowulf follows the blood trail. In fact, the king and the foot soldiers marched bearing limewood shields. So, and they all go together, follow the tracks down to the forest trail, and they go to this bog area. And it says, essentially, she'd borne the king's thane, the body, not the soul, because remember, Ashir is dead. So she'd taken him all the way down to, along this trail. Now, Beowulf, the noble, he's noble, crossed steep, stony slopes. And yes, actually, if you look at the original, which I won't pull up, but it is step, stony, stan, slop. So it's as those S's are all there. And they loved alliteration. That was a big thing for them. We can't always translate that alliteration, but sometimes we can. But like this dour and dismal, both words in the original start with D's. So that's actually really common. So it's just part of their the poetic pauses and stuff like that. The other thing that they do is what's called a caesura. It's a like the first half of the line is one half of the, it's just, and there's a break in the middle, and then you put the next one. And that break, that pause, a lot of the verses even show a space in between those two halves. So you'll notice a lot of lines have a comma in the middle or even a period in the middle. And that creates a caesura, and I'll just show you what that is. I think it actually, since these verses were not written down for so long, the pause in the middle helps people memorize them. It's kind of like creates rhythms. Usually there are two beats on one half of the line and two beats on the second half of the line between. So the caesura separates two beats from two, I guess I should say, two stressed beats, because there are usually many syllables, but the two beats, two emphasis beats where you like really pound it in. So that's kind of all the way through. So he goes all the way until he reaches essentially where the water is, and the water below seethed with blood. So this is the creepy water that Hrothgar was talking about. And for the Danes, the shielding's friends, there was heart's pain to endure. They know that this is bad because right on the edge of the water, they find Asher's head by the cliff edge. And they're just like, oh, well, yeah, we thought he was dead, and he is. And the lake welled blood, a fiery gore. And so the war horn sounded a death dirge. I think taps, and they all are. I mean, nobody's going in there because it's like, ugh. They even sat down to watch. Clear in the water, a host of serpents, strange sea dragons, conning the deep, water demons on sloping headlands. So essentially, they're all writhing around, worms, wild things slithering down in bitter rage when they heard the call of the war horn. So they start playing that sad dirge, and all of the writhing serpents inside the water start going, and I guess they're hideous and creepy too. A gate shot one with an arrow deep through the heart. It ended its riding there in the water. So literally, one of Beowulf's men just shot him with an arrow and killed one. And essentially, let's see, 4 spears. So it comes like it drifts over to shore, and then they drag it up. Now Beowulf is fearless of death. Of course, now, okay, so it's not just that the water's murky and gross. It's not just that Grendel's mom has gone in there. It's that now he's got to go in there too, and there are all these creepy serpents all swarming around in there. I mean, it's just not. I don't know if you've ever noticed, like you've ever been in the water when something's swimming around. I mean, I know like if you're in the Gulf, there's a lot of times sharks are swimming, and they love swimming around the areas where people are swimming. You know, like the waist high water. It's one of the, because it's warm. The water's really warm right there. But there are other things too. We actually saw a manatee once floating in the water. But the truth is when you see something like that, and especially snakes, I mean, if you're in the water and there's a snake in the water in this area, it is highly possible that it's a water moccasin. And that is not where you want to meet a water, not that you ever want to meet a water moccasin. You don't ever want to, no, they're all bad. But you really don't want to meet one in the water. The truth is they can swim better than you can. So anyway, all these serpents are, I'm just trying to give you something, I guess, to think about. But they're all churning in the water. If you guys have not already left this video because you're just like creeped out completely. But, you know, Beowulf, though, he's like, okay, he's fearless of death. So what does he do? He puts on his armor. And he put on his mesh chainmail, which is going to be important to protect his frame there in the depths of the lake, and so that no grip could crush his heart, no grasping in malice choke his life. So he does put his armor on. Now, this armor was probably many tens of pounds. Okay, so some armor was upwards of 50 pounds. So he's putting on all this weight, and then he's going to go swim, which is also scary. But remember, he beat Brecca in the swimming contest, so he's good. And he killed all those serpents too. Remember he killed all the sea monsters while he was doing it. So anyway, he puts a shining helmet on, and everybody's kind of looking at him like, I can't believe you're going in the water. But just before he leaves, so he's all armed and he's about to like hop in the water, but Unferth, remember that guy who said, well, didn't I hear that you lost this swimming contest to Brecca, and aren't you just a rube? You know, and then Beowulf said, no, actually, I'm not. And I heard you killed your own brother, and you haven't protected Hrothgar, and, you know, had all that stuff to tell him back. Well, so Unferth was a jerk before, but Unferth then essentially lends him a sword. Runting. The sword even has a name. It's kind of like Arthurian myth, where Arthur had the sword Excalibur. Well, you know, I guess a lot of people name their swords. Well, his was Runting, and it was the finest of ancient treasures, iron-edged, alike with snake forms, tempered in blood. It had never failed any man who had waved it in battle. And yet, Unferth didn't use it. And Unferth hasn't, you know, he didn't get the glory that Beowulf did, but he lends it to Beowulf for this. And so this is actually like a peace offering. When he lent that sword to the better man, Ecglaf's great son neglected to mention the words he had uttered when in drink, not daring to risk his life down there under the swirling wave, glory foregone, a brave man's fame. So in other words, he's like, he doesn't say the things, the snotty things that he said before. Instead, and Beowulf doesn't say snotty stuff back. So he knows that he is essentially giving glory to someone else, but he can't do it. I mean, there's a humility that goes with that Unferth can't do it himself, so he's going to give it to Beowulf. Okay. And then we go down to, this is so much fun. I love this part because it's like absolute unreality. So he speaks to Unferth, and to Hrothgar, and he says, okay, I'm ready to go. I am ready for every venture. Think what we've said, that if I should depart life, then after my death, you would act like a father, protector of my company. In other words, if I die, please send me, send my people back and make sure they stay safe. Not just because I'm alive, but as if you're my dad. And then send all the treasure you gave me to Helac, to my king. Because remember, what's he going? He's going for glory and treasure, glory and gold. And that treasure goes to his king. So he says, if I die and I don't ever come back, wait. But if I don't come back out of this pond again, then just send all that treasure to my king. Okay. So it's almost like this is his will. Okay. And let Unferth have my blade. Okay. And he takes Unferth's blade instead. So he doesn't take his own blade. He takes Unferth's, this big long sword. Okay, named Runting. And so then he goes. Not waiting any reply, he plunged bravely into the depths of the seething lake. And this is my favorite part. It took him the best part of the day before he could reach its solid bed. Okay, so at dawn, he's woken up to go see the king because of the attack. Very soon after, he's in armor at the bed. They follow the trail back to so we're talking maybe an hour or two at the very most. And then he swims all the rest of the day down to the bed of the lake. So the lake is super deep. And of course, he has no breathing. There's there's nothing out there. Okay. So but he swims down for like almost a day, with no oxygen tank or nothing. And even with oxygen tanks, the biggest tank, you could only scuba dive for so long, no, but he just swims for hours and hours with no breathing. But the truth is the Grendel's dam, who has no name, she's just Grendel's mom, which is just kind of sad, but she knows immediately that it's him. She knew that there was a human. She could just sense it. So she actually swims out and she is going to get him. So she tries to just kill him. Okay. So he's swimming down in his armor. She senses from her cave under the water that he's out there, that there's a human in the water, and she's going to go get him. So she sees the man in her dire grasp, yet in no way could she get at his body. Remember, he's fully armed. So he's got armor all over him, even his head. And his chainmail doesn't, the ring mail that they're showing here, it doesn't budge. So she wants to just, claw him to death, and she can't get to him. So essentially she grabs him. The she-wolf of the waters bore him off to her lair, preventing him for all his courage from wielding a sword, while a horde of strange things tracked his scent. Tusked creatures struck at his armor. So he's being attacked by the serpents in the water, by other creatures in the water, and he's being dragged into the cave by her. And so essentially he gets pulled into the cave, and when the earls saw he was fast in some house of malice, out of the force of the flood, whose roof stopped the water. So in other words, the cave has air. Okay. And there's actually fire in there, a pallid flame glimmering alive. And he sees the Grendel's dam, and he tries to thrust, like he tries to stab her with his sword. Remember, Runting swung so the ring-marked blade rang out in its wild war song, yet he found the steel would not hew and bite. So remember, Grendel, he said he was going to fight him with his bare hands, and it's a good thing he did, because he was impervious to attacks with swords. So the weapons wouldn't have done any good. They wouldn't cut through his skin. That's the only way he could have been killed, is to get his arm ripped off, essentially. And so Beowulf did it the only way it could be done. But he tried to use his sword against the Grendel's dam, Grendel's mom. It's not going to work. It failed him. It has never failed before. But for the first time, its glory faded. The precious gift powers failed, and it won't work. So, but Beowulf's not going to give up. He's still strong in courage, mindful of fame. Mindful of fame. Like, of all the things to be thinking about, I would be like, just save my life, people. But no, he's only thinking about, I could get fame if I killed this chick. And then in fury, he hurled the solid steel to the ground and trusted instead to a hand grasp. Remember, he'd ripped Grendel's arm off. So must a man do who would win long-lasting glory in battle. He must be careless of life. Then without qualm, the Gate Prince gripped Grendel's dam by the shoulder, heaved hard in his anger, throwing his deadly foe to the floor. But she hit back swiftly, so he throws her to the floor. She gets back up, and she catches him in a fierce grasp, gripping him tight. The strongest of sure-footed heroes, daunted, stumbled, and took a fall. Then she straddled him and drew her broad, bright blade, wanting vengeance then for her only child. So she's sitting on top of him, and she's got her blade to kill him. But the twined mail mesh saved Beowulf's life, so she can't stab him with her sword either. And he surely would have died down there if his firm armor, that net of chain, had not helped him. And holy God giving glory, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so this is farther. Yeah, we have a little bit farther we can go. I was like, surely we didn't cut it off before she took care of it. But then, okay, so he's going to die. She's sitting on top of him trying to stab him, but he won't, the chainmail won't let it through. It's kind of like the mithril that Frodo Baggins wears that keeps him from dying. So that's what happened. So then he saw on a weapon pile, da-dum, this is so like an American movie, a sword, firm-edged from the days of giants. So this is a magic sword, a warrior's winning blade of choice, though greater than any man could trust himself to wield in a fight. So in other words, this is a god, like a magic. It's a fairy sword. Okay. And so this fairy sword, this goblin made, or you could, I mean, who knows, any fae. Fae is just, it kind of covers the dwarves and elves and everybody else. That's all. Those are all fae creatures. And I'll type that in here too. Fae is just how it's spelled. But he sees this other sword, and so but of course it's bigger than any other man could ever hold. So there's no way a guy, just a regular dude, could like wield this sword and do something with it. But of course Beowulf's different because he's massive. And so he picks him up, seized the hilt, drew the sword in his furious frenzy, striking without thought for his life, so the edge sliced deep into her neck, shattering the bone, severing it wholly, that doomed house of flesh. So she fell. So he cut off her head with the sword. It's super gross. I mean, it really is. The blade, blood wet, he hailed his work. And so he's like, woo, okay, there's blood everywhere, but hey. And then he finds, essentially, he's looking around. And so he searched the hall, and he's angered and intent. And he's looking, his sword held high, because he's looking for what? He's essentially looking to make sure Grendel's dead. And so all the evil he worked on the Danes, more than that once when he slew Hrothgar's hearth comrades in sleep. So remember, all those people he killed and everything else. Beowulf, the fierce warrior, now repaid him for that. He found Grendel's scarred body lying there lifeless, its flesh torn by him and Heorot. He gave it a harsh sword blow. The corpse split at this stroke after death. He cut off the head. So he takes Grendel's head. The wise men watching with Hrothgar saw the lake boil in a sudden turmoil. So, of course, he cuts off Grendel's head. He cuts off Grendel's mom's head. And then all the blood and everything from that, and all of the sea creatures are probably all messed up by the fact that these animals are now dead. And so up above the water, the wise men, the people who, the soldiers who came with him, there, and Hrothgar himself saw the lake boil in a sudden turmoil of blood red water. And they're like, oh crap, he's dead. Like the good king they spoke of, no longer expecting the prince to return to their glorious leader. They agreed the she-wolf of the deep must have destroyed him. Literally, they just decide. They're like, oh, that blood, that's it's all over. And so they really think he's dead. They're like, oh no, let's mourn. But then it's 9 o'clock. And he's like, okay, he's not coming back. And the shieldings left the cliff with their gold-giving king. So Hrothgar and all of the Danes go, he's dead. Okay, well, let's go home. And they leave. But Beowulf's men, the Gates, remember he has those 15 men with him, sick at heart, stay to gaze at the mere hope without belief that they might. I love that phrase, hope without belief. They hope they will see him, but they don't think they will. Hey, Tracy, you got in just in time. We're just about to get to the end of this section.
Hey,
How are you doing?
I just got back from the daughter. I'll tell you later what else going on.
Okay. Okay, so this is all being recorded, but I'm almost done. This is the last set of verses that I'll do today. Okay, so we have Hrothgar and his people. Hrothgar and the Danes leave. They go back home. They're like, oh, Beowulf's dead, and they just leave. And Beowulf's men have hope without belief. So they really want Beowulf to be alive, but they really think he's not. Yet they can't leave. So they stay and watch the water. Even when all the stuff goes away, the turmoil that was happening, all the blood is gone. So beneath the water, though, essentially what happened is that sword that he used, this magic sword that was goblin made or something, fae made, the sword starts breaking apart because of the blood of the two creatures. And so essentially he sees all this treasure down in the cave, but he doesn't take any of it back. Essentially, all he takes is the head of Grendel and then the sword hilt of the blade. So, because the blade managed to cut through Grendel's body and cut through Grendel's mom's body because it was special, but their blood actually ate away at the sword. So the only thing that's left is the sword hilt, which is still huge because the sword's gigantic. But all he brings back in the swim back up is the Grendel's head and the sword hilt. Okay. And it is all, again, their poisonous blood or whatever. That's what it says. The blood of that poisonous alien spirit. And so then he swims. He swims out and upwards. I'm sure it took him a long time, not the whole day that it took to swim down. But the turmoil is over, and Grendel's mom is dead. Grendel is dead, and so he comes pretty happy. He's all, ta-da, I did it. And his band of men ran towards him, thanking God. Of course, they're thanking God because that's what the scribes would say. Their prince the prince returned safe and sound. Swiftly, the hero's helmet and mail were loosened. The lake grew still because remember, the lake doesn't have those creatures living down there anymore. But it's still bloodstained. So I wouldn't go swimming in it. It's probably going to be poisoned for a while too. Remember that poisonous blood ate away at the metal. So I'm good. I'm not going to go swimming in that one either. It's like the Gulf after an oil spill. Okay. Anyway, but they're all happy. So they go back to Hrothgar at the very end. And so they're going to actually do this. They're going to go back to Hrothgar's hall. He'll give them even more gold and more, prizes and everything. And then that's at the end of this, which we don't read all the way to the end of this episode, but he's going to go back to Gateland, to the land of the gates. And they soon reached the place, 14 of them. Remember, 14 because one of them was eaten by Grendel. And In a proud throng to the mead hall they go, and there he entered, Lord of the Thanes, a man brave indeed, blah, blah, blah. So wonderful. There's a lot of that kind of praising stuff going on. Proven in battle to greet Hrothgar. Grendel's head gripped by the hair. Remember, the arm was taken because when Mom came to visit the hall and took a soldier, she also ripped the arm off of where it had been nailed up. But he brought Grendel's head, gripped by the hair, and it was hurled to the floor where all were drinking, and earls and ladies gazed in wonder at the fearful sight. I personally wouldn't want to be eating and drinking with the big old ugly Grendel head lying on the floor. But this is a different kind of place. I mean, it's in some ways, if somebody commented in their journals too that they were just like, this is really bloody. Well, the truth is it was, but if you go to the Iliad and you read the Iliad, it's all bloody. I mean, war is bloody. It doesn't, I mean, they talk about people's bones breaking and souls leaving their bodies and being cut navel up into the chin. I mean, it's just very graphic. And so this is something that people have done for centuries and millennia. They like all the gory details, I guess. But thank you. Okay, thank you. But at the same time, so it's all bloody and gory and creepy and everything, but that's what they like. They like these kind of like wacky details. And they, unlike, maybe the Greeks were a little that, they tended, remember Oedipus went and poked his eyes out off stage. The Romans would have totally had him do it on stage. They would have made it look, with blood spurting, because the Romans loved that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of listeners wanted to hear all these fancy details. So, they just wanted the specifics. Honestly, even with the Odyssey, which is not, it doesn't tend to be really graphic, at the next to the last chapter in the Odyssey is Odysseus cleaning house. And his wife has all these like 150 suitors who are sitting there eating his food and drink over and over again for weeks and weeks, demanding that she marry one of them. And he cleans house literally. He literally tracks them all down and kills them, and then washes the blood off with, you know, chlorine water or something. It's nasty, but it's, to show his bravery. And this is definitely part of that. Everybody else is scared to death to don't jump into the pool, into the icky, murky mere and go and swim after Grendel's mom, except Beowulf. He's willing to do whatever he needs to do to get that glory and treasure. And it's always the glory and treasure. Those are the two things, because if he's a warrior, he wins glory by taking care of these humongous tasks, being stronger than everybody else and fighting hard and not giving up, even at the risk of his own, losing his own life. But in return, Hrothgar does this. Any good king, any good lord of a tribe would give out treats. Essentially, you get rewarded, and the reward should be monetary. Like you're getting gold, you're getting jewelry, you're getting fancy cups, you're getting stuff. Just like the dragons were supposed to like sleep on their hoard of gold. Well, the reason that was even a creation is because people wanted to amass that gold. And even today people do that. They have gold toilets and gold leaf on the ceilings, and ugh, I mean, they've done that for centuries too. But it's, again, that it's so they can show it off to other people. Look what I've done, look how much I've amassed as far as wealth and things like that. But that's it for this part. We're going to start. Oh, what are I have to look. I have to move this around because we've got to go and look at, I've got two of these. Come on. Nope, that's it. I don't have it up. But we've got to go and look at the last fight, essentially, the last 500 or so lines of the poem. And that's where we have the fight with the dragon. But I will do that next time. So just keep looking for it. I'll probably, once I do we have the chat tomorrow night, just enter through the Monday one, of course. But once we do that chat, then I'll post them both up, so you'll have both of them. And that's it until spring break's over. So we've got some time to relax.